Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
How's
Right,
it going?
good. Right, looks like we have two people in the waiting room. Morning.
Might as well put the slide deck up and for the waiting thing. I apologize to everybody in advance. This is the first time I've done this, so it'll be a learning experience for me as well.
You got this.
Morning.
Morning, everyone. I'll give it a couple more minutes for people to pop on in. We all know how the Zoom situation kind of works, so and then I'll get started. Good morning, everyone. It is fantastic to see some of you. I recognize some names. I don't recognize others, but it's great to see you all. Words are hard this morning. I haven't had nearly enough caffeine. We all know how that goes. So, figure give it like just one more minute, and I'll start kicking off with this. All right, good morning. This session is Access, Argos, and You, Administrative Data Strategies at Lehigh. I apologize for the long title. I think it's funny to add ridiculously long titles to seminar series, and I think it got way too serious for what I was aiming for. So I apologize if it seems like a very lofty subject. It might be a little dry. I apologize in advance. But here we are. My name is John Zekind. I'm with LTS Enterprise Systems. I am the current data strategist, which is another lofty and yet probably not very well-defined job role. I try to help various administrative business units with data concepts. Just to kind of give a background of me, and I won't bore you to tears with this because this is just like I'm used to doing other seminars and stuff like that. I've been at Lehigh for 8 years. Bunch of different roles all around data. My goal in general has been to just help people get where they need to go with data and try to move things into a more automated kind of mindset where you don't have to do all of this stuff manually. You can probably just get the data from the source. And that's part of what we're talking about. So to start to kick this off, when I say administrative data, what does that mean, and what does operational versus strategic data mean? And I feel like I won't bore you to tears by reading just from the slides, because that's very boring. And also, I want this to be as conversational as possible too. So if you have any questions, if you want me to clarify something, please feel free to throw it in the chat, or raise your hand or whatever. I am way okay with this being more of like a roundtable discussion than me just kind of talking at you. So administrative data being, when we talk about administrative versus academic data, mostly you all are aware of where the administrative stuff sits. So I don't want to belabor that too much. But a lot of times when people are talking about data at Lehigh, there's usually like the three main buckets of research data, administrative data, and academic data. Argos is generally around administrative data, things that help our business units kind of do what they're doing. And then operational versus strategic is operational is like the list of things that you're doing or the people that you're contacting or whatever. Strategic is more like big dashboards and like aggregate data that's associated with your office and whatnot. For the most part, Argos sits firmly within the academic realm or in the administrative realm and operational reporting, though it can do more. So part of this conversation is going to be Access and Argos. And I don't know if you've heard, but Access is kind of going away for the purposes of business being used to connect to Banner. 32-bit Microsoft Office, which was the last one that a lot of Access databases were built in, especially some of the long-running, long-in-the-tooth, early 2000s kind of Access databases that we still use on campus, will not work with the 64-bit version of Microsoft Access. And that is going away, that 32-bit is going away next year. I.e. it is no longer being supported by Microsoft, i.e. we are not going to be really supporting it from an LTS perspective. We have some triage ways of helping out and making sure that business can still get done if you use Access, but we want to help move you towards an Argos reporting style. Now, other usages of Access, like you got a department Access database that's associated with just your own office's data, or it's built on 64-bit Access. We're not trying to take that away from you yet right now. With us moving to the cloud, with Banner, there were some concessions that were made on Ellucian's part that allowed us to continue to do business as usual, but we're going to try to be moving to a more sustainable way of connecting to Banner, getting you your data, and making sure that you have it in a way that's a little bit more long running and secure going forward. So if you have an Access database, where will it go? And for the record, this is like I said, the scope is 32-bit Access databases that are connecting to Banner. This other uses are not necessarily kind of covered in this particular conversation, but does it connect to Banner? And it doesn't, you're good. Business as usual, we're not going to be touching that. But if it does, and you haven't, we're currently trying to touch base with as many departments as we possibly can from an LTS Enterprise Systems perspective to try to get you converted to help you have Argos as part of your tool set as opposed to Access. If you're not on the list, we are building an admin environment that will allow you to use your old Access databases, but hopefully we can help phase that out. And if you are on our list, we're going to be working on getting this into Argos, which is a tool hosted by Ellucian. It is an eVisions product, which two different companies, but kind of hosted by the same Ellucian cloud. And it helps us report off of database data. And by database data, I mean like Oracle and MySQL and Microsoft SQL Server. It allows for pretty much querying of anything off of Banner based on more AD access than Active Directory access than you having an individual connection to Oracle, which means that it's one less password you have to worry about, and you can just log in and it works on the web. So you don't necessarily need to have a Windows machine to run it like you do with Access. It also has the ability to connect to all sorts of different databases, and it's faster than reporting off of Access databases because of the fact that it is hosted in the cloud right next to where our banner instance is located. I'm going to talk about the capabilities on the right-hand side before I talk about the roles, but it allows for reporting and lists and pretty much aggregate data, pretty much anything that you could run as a query, you can run in Argos for the purposes of getting your data. And it has the ability to have form elements, which I'll show you in the demo, and interactivity so that you can make sure that you can dig in or look at things in a more aggregate way as well. We can also display, there are some limited graphing capabilities in Argos. We don't use that a lot now, but we would love to see some use cases that we can build some of that for you. That will allow you to show things graphically. We also have this thing called OLAP cubes, which allow you to essentially, is everybody familiar with a pivot table? I don't want to like just assume that everybody knows what the heck I'm talking about, but in Excel, Google Sheets, there's pivot tables, which allow you to kind of drag and drop fields. OLAP cubes kind of let you do the same sort of thing, where it presents you with a list of like fields and metrics and whatnot, and you can essentially just drag and drop those into the columns and the rows of a particular report, and it allows you to see things in aggregate. In addition, we have the ability to, through the interface, export out as CSV and PDF, depending on which part of the report you're talking about, or which part of the dashboard you're talking about as well. And then we can also create banded reports, which are essentially like just slotted list reports with Lehigh branding. Those capabilities are all kind of built into these 4 roles that people are in. Argos administrators, there's just a few of us that are Argos administrators. We're handling the security and the users and the APIs behind the scenes. Data block designers build code and content in Argos. Report writers built content off of the dashboards in the data blocks, and report viewers are everybody else that just are able to consume the data. Once I kind of show the demo, if you want to get started, we have there's 2 different general instances of Argos. One that's more for development and alumni relations, since they were the first group to really adopt Argos as a tool. And then the general Argos instance, which helps out everybody else from an administrative perspective. If you don't have access to something in Argos, it's a JIRA ticket to get added to it. There's a process by which you get approvals from the data stewards in that particular office, but for the most part, it's pretty quick to get that. And then if you are familiar with SQL and you want to get started to build your own reports, or if you would like to, at least get some help getting reports for you, you can put it also in another ticket to Enterprise Systems Argos as well, and we can try to get you set up with whatever's appropriate for development. So let me switch over to the demo, because I think that's going to be more enlightening than just about anything else here, and we'll go from there. Now, where are my Zoom controls? Because they went to another screen, of course. All right, there's that. And then, all right, can we see this? Can I get a thumbs up from anybody on video? All right, cool, awesome, fantastic. So when you go to Argos, generally, it'll show up like this. Obviously, if we could brand this with Lehigh the way we do with every other application across the LTS spectrum, I'm sure we would call it, Lehigh My Reports or something like that. But we decided to keep it the branding eVisions Argos. When you log in, it'll just be a single LDAP login, and then ignore this Argos piece. Can you see my cursor? I cannot tell if we can see my cursor, if I need to do annotations. All right, cool. This Argos piece actually will just pop up a Windows application. You don't have to worry about that. The web viewer is what we usually prescribe for people to access Argos. And then whatever you have access to, there are essentially, the hierarchy is across the left-hand side here, is all of the different offices that own a subset of the data in Banner or wherever it's being sourced from. I can see everything because I'm one of the administrators of the tool. So obviously you would probably not see a lot of this stuff if you weren't a developer or you weren't part of the administrative thing. What I wanted to show you, just because everybody's familiar with desktop finance as an access database, right? Or at least most people are. What I wanted to do was show, let's see, I'm going to show this piece. So this is going to take a hot second for some things to run in the background. But what you'll see across the top is kind of a breadcrumb trail of like where you're at in the hierarchy of the tool. The root folder, finance payroll. I'm in my own user development area in our development environment, and then the data blocks that we're dealing with right here, which is the finance payroll dashboard. Underneath that, there are, if there is an available report that's associated with a particular data block, you'll see that under reports, and you can actually run that report. I don't know what that report does right now because I wasn't the one who originally developed this particular data block. I was just doing some tweaking behind the scenes. But anything that you select on the screen would go into what the report deals with if the report has those kinds of functionalities. So inside, generally there are multiple tabs if whoever's developed has created such. And there's interactivity. This particular query runs and is essentially a source function for any other pieces of code that's behind the scenes. In addition to that, what I can do, in addition to just it displaying, a multi-column list, one of the big things that I think is kind of like one of those really cool functions of this is the ability to filter within that as well. If this particular thing had 200 records, well, I don't want to see 200 records. I want to filter by insert criteria here. It'll actually tell you and allow you to change the filters for that particular multi-column list. So you don't have to rerun it or change a lot of your variables. You can just show what you want to show. You can sort just like any other kind of web-based piece here, and then you can export everything to CSV with whatever fields you want to do. So in addition to the ability to just display this information, you can go, okay, well, if someone's developed, a list of things for me, I need to contact these people that are associated with this particular attribute, that are associated, that have this GPA or whatever to help with, management of a particular case. You can go into here and then export it out as CSV so that you can use it the way you normally would use an Excel spreadsheet. But at least this way, you know that it's as up to date as possible. And you don't have to necessarily export it out at all. But that's pretty much the long and the short of it. It's not a hugely complex tool, but it is very powerful because there's a lot of interoperability between the various different pieces of the tool. Do we have any questions about the demo or anything that we would like to look at? Bunch of different form elements like calendars and drop downs, and they can all be sourced dynamically from queries. Like this fiscal year query is probably based on a date that's associated like when it was run, so no one has to manually update that drop down like you would in, say, Access. A lot of the stuff can be pinned to a username, i.e. I don't really have access to these indexes, and I don't think that this data is actually correct. This has some dummy data in there. I don't have access to all indexes, right? I have access to a subset of indexes across the university that are only for my testing purposes. This allows you to dynamically source what that is from the username as well that you logged in as. So we have a couple things across campus that are like, there's an active student list dashboard. There are only certain people that can see certain colleges worth of students for this active student list dashboard. That's based on your username, based on a table behind the scenes and banner that says you're associated with these colleges. You can only see those students. So there's a lot of various different like powerful methods of safeguarding data so that people only see what's relevant to them, but then also be able to export out pieces as well. So there's that. So cool. Let's see. One of the other things that you can do is if you want to, there is a search functionality in here. It's not the most robust search functionality. I know that I know when I talk to them at Ellucian Live that they're working on upgrading the search functionality. But if I wanted to see, I just want to see my data blocks that are associated with students. Well, we have a whole bunch of stuff that Raz has put out for student stuff. And you can actually see where they're located in the hierarchy. I can look and see what, if you're looking for particular content in here, you can help find it. And that's about it. It's like I said, it's not a hugely complex tool, but it's very powerful in how much we can do with it. In addition to, I'm gonna stop this share. Where are my controls? There we go. So in addition to being able to do just querying stuff, we can export out as XML. We can send files to SFTP. We can essentially do a lot of like cool integration style stuff as well as just reporting with the tool. To put things into perspective, Argos was the prescribed tool that I used to create the process when we were still in the COVID times of locking and unlocking doors, doing the self-assessment. That went to our security system using Argos on an every 15-minute schedule via a bunch of different criteria, sending who has access to their door panels. So it's a very powerful tool, but not super complex when I try to demo it. So that's why it's only a very short demo. Let me boop ba-doo, boop ba-doo. There we go. All right. So this kind of comes to like the very end of kind of my prepared slide deck. I will definitely send out this as a PDF so that everybody has access to the actual links. But we do have a lot of content on Confluence, which is our prescribed kind of knowledge management tool. We have a bunch of training and some stuff that we have regarding Argos help both for web and for developers. We have a tool by the name of Data Cookbook, as owned by Office of Institutional Research and Strategic Analytics, that is helping with define and help guide people to understand various different data elements across campus and how we use these terms and where you would find them in particular systems. And a link to the LTS support ticket. So that's kind of where I'm at the end of my presentation. So I would love to, if there's any questions or. I just trailed off. I'm a great public speaker, obviously. This might be a very short presentation. I apologize.
John, I have a question actually.
Sure. Yeah.
When you were in Argos, I guess I'm curious on why I've never really had to use it, and I only use desktop finance, even though it's going to be going away. I saw that you could see budgets and like balances, but does it show any like details of what has been charged to the budget monthly or anything like breakdown, itemized breakdown, or just the budgets, like the balances overall?
Sure. Let me go back into the finance payroll dashboard. So depending on what era of the university that you're in, whether you're like 8 years like me or brand new or someone that's been around for a lot longer, kind of depends on whether you're going to be routed as a business from to desktop finance or to the finance payroll dashboard, or who's teaching you how to look at budgets and whatnot. So Where are my controls? There they are. Hello, controls. Press buttons. All right. I'm real good at this, y'all. Let me tell you. So this was a solution that was created and paid for by finance back when we were originally rolling out Argos to more administrative pieces. Wait for that to do the Fundorg security behind the scenes. But yes, it does have the ability to look at individual transactions. So I'll show you how that kind of digs in. And for the record, we're not trying to rip any access databases away from you. It's just the idea that Microsoft is no longer supporting it. So if there are bugs or something, or of security violation or security considerations that are associated with it, it becomes a big risk from us from an LTS perspective. But in here, you can go into the budget. I'm going to go budget balances by index. You can do multiple indexes as well. But the moment you go into the account summary for the above indexes and you go finance transactions, you can actually look in each individual transaction within that particular index. There's also the ability to look at payroll detail, but I don't have payroll information here, and that's one of the security considerations, right? But for you, Tara, I mean, if you don't have access to this, I could, there is, if you go to go.lehigh.edu/Argos and go to the general instance and log in, you might actually have access to it.
Yeah, I'm assuming I'll have access to all the budgets that I currently do for LTS, and I could see, because it's what I have for Banner 9.
Yeah,
as well.
everything associated with the finance payroll dashboard is associated with what indexes you have access to in
currently.
Banner.
Okay.
And that's that Fundorg security that I mentioned earlier, is a block of code that goes, hey, out of all the indexes across all time and space, which ones do you have access to? And that ends up being part of how this dashboard kind of works. So, but yeah.
Nice. Thank you for showing me that.
Yeah. We're not trying to necessarily change people's way of doing business, right? We're not trying to necessarily go, hey, you're doing something that works for you, we want you to change just arbitrarily. But from the purposes of access kind of going away for some of those older stuff, and making sure that work can continue to get done, and maybe we can help with process improvement in addition. That's the hope. So yeah. Any other questions or concerns or?
John, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I might not have my video on. There
No
I
worries.
am. Hi. When I'm looking at my professor's PDA funds on this page, and I go down to their financial transactions, I can see money that's been allocated to their student workers, which are the contracts that I manage. But I cannot see what money has been allocated for each individual student. Their name does not appear here. Would I need payroll detail in order to see that?
I believe that is the case, yes. And that's something.
How would I request that?
I believe that is and this is where I get a little bit out of my own depth, because this ends up kind of being in the finance payroll end of things, where I just kind of I'm in the reporting side of things. I think that is a request to payroll, and then they give you the access behind the scenes that would then allow you to see those particular. I believe there's a different like FOPL code that's associated with a payroll account versus an index that's associated with the earmarking of the dollars that go into the payroll, right? So
I see.
And I think that that's kind of where that breakdown happens. So, but yeah, I think that that's a payroll question. But yeah, I think that would be how you would be able to see that. So.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Well, I will make sure to update my content so that it is not a full hour, because I feel like I didn't budget this appropriately. But if anybody has any questions or other considerations to talk about, I would love to field any questions or anything else. So.
John, I guess I have one more access question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we, who are the administrators in certain departments and colleges, need to publicize things that are outside of our own college. I, for example, control a minor in economics, which is only available to students who are not in the College of Business, which is where my department is housed. But in Argos, I do not have access to pull those accounts. And I've reached out to LTS a couple different times to try to gain access to pull lists of students in the engineering college, or like undeclared students in the engineering college, or undeclared students in the College of Health, for example. But I keep getting denied. And I'm wondering if there is any other process or somebody that I can appeal to.
So there was this big push back in like the 2015, 2016 era, when we were starting to do a lot of the Argos development and just be like, free data for everybody, you know, and administrative purposes. But then we realized very quickly that if everybody had the ability to see every student's thing, that those inboxes would get really full with a bunch of stuff that may not necessarily be super relevant, and the signal to noise ratio would be really bad. And that's not necessarily saying that you would be doing that, like spamming folks, but we wanted to make sure that it was pretty consistent across the board, which is why the active student list dashboard only lets you see the colleges that you're associated with. I figured that there's a broader conversation that's happening, I think, in the RAS area. That's where that would be where that request would probably need to go, to be like, hey, I would like to advertise this particular thing, not just for my own college, but for like the entire university, or for individuals that are in these other colleges that might be relevant to my area. I feel like that ends up being the conversation there. Unfortunately, LTS Enterprise Systems, we try not to steer policy. We just kind of administrate the policy as it stands. And unfortunately, that means if they didn't approve you for that particular college information, that we don't give it out, unfortunately. So does that answer the question? I know that that's not a satisfactory answer, but
I guess
or
what I'm asking
satisfying
is there a specific committee within RAS that discusses access or discusses changes to access that perhaps I could reach out to?
Enrollment, oh, sorry if you knew that answer, John.
Sure, go ahead.
Enrollment management services, I would say, would be,
Okay.
because they're starting to take over the technology side of our office. Maybe Jen, Brian O'Notts, or yeah, I don't know who you've talked to in the office, but I know it's policy that colleges shouldn't have access to other colleges' info, but maybe if you can make your case, I guess, enough or whatever. But maybe I'd start by reaching out to Jen O'Brien Knotts.
Yeah, and I know that
Thanks very much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I thank you, Jessica. I think that there's also a broader conversation happening at the data governance level to be like, hey, as long as we can actually we're trying to open up data a little bit more and not have things as siloed, like by department, by STEM, by college. I know that that's very frustrating, especially when as a large machine, everybody's trying to do the same thing, which is increase outcomes for our students and make sure that things are happening as efficiently as possible, do more with less, etc.
Absolutely.
Which is part of the whole thing. Fortunately, there are some mentalities that need to be shifting in order for some of that to happen. So I'm going to go through the chat here and kind of catch up on some of the questions. Does everyone use Argos? I work in RAS and we have several reports that may be helpful for coordinators and faculty. So everybody has access to Argos as a baseline, right? You can go to the web viewer, you can log in. You may not be authenticated to or authorized to see any content yet. And if so, put in a ticket for Argos just saying like, I'm in this office, I would like to see the reports in there. And then the approval chain will go through what it needs to go through for you to get access. But there are external folders for each individual office, and things like there's some faculty roster reports that are able to be run by all faculty that are technically built by RAS that were created in this like external folder that people can see. So it kind of depends on what content we're talking about, but yes, there are pieces of content that are available for broader audiences. And because we use Active Directory as a group structure, we can slot people into like broader groups that are associated with kind of like their, you know, employee type. Like there's faculty, staff as a constituent type that is part of a particular set of Argos stuff. We had another question. So if Access is going away in the next year, how do departments request to get their database reports converted to Argos? So we have in enterprise systems a project called Access to Argos that we've been trying to kind of get a handle on, and it's been somewhat difficult because when you look at the network drive at Lehigh, there are over 7,000 Access databases. And that's after we paired the big list of like all of the different extensions that Access can have, down to those who weren't duplicates, weren't like /training, /backup, /old, 7,000 of them. So trying to make sure that we target those ones that are appropriate has been somewhat difficult. So this is me asking me to help you, help me help you, etc. If you would like to put in a ticket in Jira at the help desk, if you lehigh.edu/help, and then create a ticket through Enterprise Systems Argos. Just say, hey, I have an Access database. I need this converted. We're going to put those into a queue and make sure that we can start working on those that are, you know, kind of, I can't let this fail, and or let this just go by the wayside if, you know, they yank, you know, old version of Access and we haven't, you know, upgraded yet. Now, that being said, we are making sure that when the 32-bit goes away, that we do have an environment that people can safely use it so that it is not as big of a security concern. Like I said, we don't want to stop business from happening. We just want to make sure that it happens in a safe and sustainable way, especially when Microsoft goes, we're not patching this anymore. So if you have any cybersecurity issues with regards to this old version, well, too bad. It's been 5 years. We're not going to support this anymore. So, so we've got some strategies in place, and before we get rid of 32-bit access, we will make sure that that is available and communicated out to the business units before, you know. So it's either it gets converted and hooray, we don't have to worry about it anymore, or, you know, it's in this safe area that you can continue using the Access databases without it being like a big security concern before those things get revoked. So. Let's see, there's this, which is okay, cool. Can we demo the external folder? Sure. Let me pop back in here. All right, cool. So we'll go back to the root. So inside of, say, let's see, registration and academic services, we have things like this faculty folder, which my understanding is that everybody that's in the, you know, faculty subgroup in Active Directory, I forget exactly how that hierarchy works, is able to see these particular Argos dashboards, data blocks. So if I wanted to go, okay, I need to look at, I'll be honest with you, I'm not as familiar with some of the content here because it's kind of a federated model of like some people build stuff, sometimes enterprise systems build stuff, et cetera. And I don't think I have access to this stuff, so nothing's going to show up in here. But these are pieces that are able to be seen by external groups than just RAS, right? From a hierarchical perspective, the first level of folders is usually who owns that data. So, you know, RAS and students is a little bit different because students kind of since everything is student pretty much in Banner, RAS is like most of the student pieces, and then anybody that's built something off of a student constituent group, like say athletics, that's technically a student series of tables, but they have their own, you know, pieces of code here. That's under student. but that second folder is usually kind of like the audience of who's going to be using that. So we've got in RAS, we have like faculty or grades. You know, internal is obviously internal to RAS, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Or am I feel like maybe I'm I feel like I am too in the weeds at times and I am not pulling far enough back to make sense. Am I making sense?
I think in general it's making sense, but I think something we struggle with in the College of Arts and Sciences is getting access to our staff and departments, business managers, coordinators that don't have it set up yet in Argos, but what do we need to specify exactly? If we don't know exactly what the new report is, it's hard to ask for access to it.
This is, yes. Okay, so
knowing what we don't know is a huge problem on campus.
absolutely. So this is a broader conversation that I think I need to kind of work with kind of the data stewards and maybe data governance and enterprise systems as a kind of collective group of being like, hey, let's make a catalog of the content that's actually there. There's some pieces in the data cookbook that are already specify what's in there. So another plug for the data cookbook, but not all the content that's in there. You know, stuff's being produced and pushed into production constantly. So keeping that up to date might be a bit of a bear, but at least having some idea as to what's out there would definitely be useful. So I'll see what I can do about like getting like a list of like by folder, by, you know, name of thing and a small synopsis of what it is, just so that we can, you know, if people need to request stuff, that would be great. Just so that people know what content's out there and what kind of stuff Argos can support. I think that would be useful. So thank you for the suggestion. Any other questions or concerns or thoughts? I feel like this is also a good time for, hey, let's like, you know, the idea that we just came up with for this catalog. I love that idea. And so, yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for everybody for coming out. I will make sure that you know, we get that. I will export out this as a PDF and make sure that everybody gets access to it. So have a great one.